So when we left off, we basically just went ahead and we created our own custom shape and we saved it into Photoshop. So we did something pretty cool there, okay? We modified Photoshop. We've modified it a little bit here and there, but in this class, we're going to modify it a bunch because the software works best when it works for you, not when you work for it. Always remember that, okay? Especially, it's a little different when you're in a computer lab, but when you're home and you have your own versions, just, modify it however you want. I have all sorts of shapes saved in my Photoshop library. Sometimes like logos that I regularly use and I know I'm going to use in Photoshop, like especially like one color ones, I have them saved as shapes so I can just go ahead and use them on the fly whenever I want. Everything you make in Illustrator could have potentially be a shape in Photoshop for you to use, and you're going to see some of the really cool things that you can do with these shapes as we go through the next video or two. Now, so before I go ahead and I do anything with the shape, I want to bring my guides back because I hid them before and I just kind of did it on the fly. So if I hold down Command or on a PC Control and then I hit the not the parenthesis, excuse me, the semicolon, my guides flick on and off. Okay, I can also go to View and I can say not clear guides or lock. I want them locked, but I can go ahead and I can say Show, and I can click on Guides, and there, right there, that is that key command. So Command semicolon, and I'm just doing this because what I want to do is I just want to kind of like visually get a breakdown of this, and I'm going to grab my shape. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to grab my shape, and I'm just going to kind of click over here to the gray area so this box disappears. And what I want to do is this. I want to just kind of fill one of these, like, 4 quadrants that I have here, one of these quads. I want to fill that with my shape. But I want to hold down my Shift key when I do it. So I'm going to click and drag. And I want to make sure I do that because just like Illustrator, if I let go of that Shift key, look, it gets all out of whack. And that just makes the shape look ugly. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down. And I'm going to pull this thing out, and there I go. I have my shape now, and it's got all these dots and stuff on it. Those are just the points, okay? If I click on the traditional move tool in Photoshop, all that stuff disappears, okay? Now, what I want to do is this. I want to make sure that I have snapping turned on, so that's checked. And I want to snap to basically everything I possibly can. And I want to take this thing, and I want to go ahead and I want to bring it over here. And it's going to give a little tug, okay? And that's just letting me know that essentially I have this thing and it's going to work out, okay? It's basically telling me that while it may not look like it's centered, we have the same exact weight on this side that we have on this side. Now, it's not visual weight, but what it is that, see how this part comes out pretty far? It's the same length that something comes out over here. If you don't like that, you can modify that, but trust me, you know what? I think trusting Photoshop's a good thing here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to snap to the bottom too. And while that foot touches, that one doesn't. Again, that's going to be okay. So I have that here. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to start to put some color in here. And I'm going to just turn off my guides and zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on. And again, this is a shape. And it's just called Shape 1 up here. It automatically was created when I pulled out the shape tool. I want to just point out one thing though, just in case you run into a problem. So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit to get rid of that. When you go ahead and you grab the shape tool, by default, we would hope that this thing that says shape, but it might say path or it might say pixels, okay? Depending on the last person who used the computer or the last time you used the computer and did something. You want it to say shape. That way when you pull this thing out, it's actually an actual shape. So that's just one thing I want to point out to you. You really, really, really want it to say shape. What if I make it bigger? Can I resize it? Yes, you can go to Edit and free transform, Command T, and you can make this thing bigger or smaller, however you want. Okay, again, just hold down the Shift key when you're doing it, and it's going to look great. And so I'll just drop it right about there, say okay to all that stuff, and I have my shape. Now, I'm going to say File and Save, because I save every little thing that I do. And I get this idiot question, this thing that I always just don't understand why they ask anymore. Maximize compatibility? Of course we maximize compatibility. So we say okay to that. Now, this isn't much of a color wheel. In fact, it's not a color wheel at all. It's a black box with this weird white shape on it. So let's apply a little bit of color, okay? So to do that, I'm literally just going to come over here to my layer palette, and I'm going to go click on that little shape thing. And this thing pops up. This is a color picker. Now, I'm purposely going to hide the shape so we can do a magic trick, okay? So right now, we have our little circle up here, right? Our little color picker circle, right? And I want to point something out. As I move this around, okay, do you notice how all these numbers are changing, right? So let's talk about these numbers a little bit. So we have HSB, RGB, LAB, and CMYK, and then we have a number, and it says FFFFFF. Whoa. HSB, that stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. LAB stands for lightness, and then A, which represents 50% of color, and B, which represents the other 50% of color, and CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And this number here that says FFFFFF, that is what's called the hexadecimal color code for web design. Okay, so there's a lot of information there. So HSB, right, talks about the hue, which is the color of an object, the saturation, which is how much, value we're putting into that, and then brightness, which is going to be how bright an object's going to be, right? And so we definitely want to go ahead and we want to understand what these things mean. So check this out. Hue, right? See this little thing right here? Hue has a relationship with this bar right here. Yep. See that? We move up and down, and that number changes, and then all those things change because hue just is another word for color. Saturation also has a relationship, but it's with the little circle, and it's when we move it right or left. So we either increase the value of the color or we decrease the value of the color, going right and left. B, or brightness, also has a relationship with this little circle, but this one is up and down. So we either, it's either bright or it's not bright. It's bright or it's dark, okay? So that's what HSB means. Now, you really want to weird somebody out in Photoshop, you go ahead and you open up their color picker, and see this little radial button here that says it's an H? Just change it to like B, and everybody gets weirded out. Oh man, what's happening? Here's the deal. The radial button just means that you can focus on this little strip right here. So if we wanted to, we can make S the strip, or we can make B the strip, or we could do RGB values, or we could do LAB values. There's nothing there for us to do CMYK values, though. We can't go ahead and press that. So we're going to work with HSB. RGB, again, red, green, and blue. These are values. Every color is made of some sort of value of red, green, and blue, and there are billions and billions of colors available to that. LAB, every color that is in the RGB spectrum can also be seen in the LAB section. Now, CMYK is a little different. Those things, they're a little bit more subdued because they're really specifically meant for print purposes, pigment, not so much for screen. FFFFFF, all that is again, that's a special code. It's like a serial number to color, essentially. So that's what that is. I'd like to point out one thing, though, just kind of like it's somewhat of an ironic thing. So HSB, right? B and S, brightness and saturation, both have a unit of measurement of a percentage. H, on the other hand, is a degree. And you know what is measured in degrees? Well, temperature. But the other thing is we measure circles in degrees. right? When we talk about going ahead and doing a flip, we call it a 180. It's a 180 degree flip essentially. So so when we do a full flip, we do a 360 degree flip, right? So circles are measured in degrees, and circles are wheels. Okay, so just I'd like to point that out. So again, here's my shape. It's hiding. I'm not even going to look at it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just do this through math. All right. So I'm going to make H stay a 0 value. I'm going to make S a 100 value and B a 100 value. And I get a big, bright, beautiful red. And I'm going to say, okay. And there's my first color on my color wheel. When we return, we're going to get the rest of the colors up there. Thank you.